Marinero, the Sick Podcast. There are podcasts, and then there are podcasts. There are interviews, chats, and discussions, and then there's the vice president of FIFA and the president of Concacaf, Victor Montagliani. What an honor.
Thanks, Tony. Great to be on your podcast. Maybe an appropriate name. You have an appropriate shirt. I think you can even add a few letters there. Pazzo in tutto.
It is the Sick Podcast, and the show is brought to you by Essentia, the world's only natural memory foam mattress. Go to myessentia.com/sickpod and use code SICKPOD for a free pillow with your purchase. Essentia Beyond Organic Sleep. Speaking of sleep, if people were sleeping, they definitely woke up after a quote that you gave a couple of days ago when you did the rounds of the media yourself. When asked about supporting a women's league in Canada, one of the things you talked about was the media. Elaborate on that if you can.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Of course, with the girls winning the gold medal, the questions were asked to the girls about having our own women's league here, or having women's professional clubs here. Which obviously, I think it's time to do that. But the question was asked to me in the media scrum, I took a bit of an offense to, I guess, the tone of the question, because they were putting the responsibility at the feet of the Canadian Soccer Association, and I just felt that was, one, very inappropriate. Two, it was also a lack of respect to the Canadian Soccer Association, who has done a tremendous amount of work. Of course, not everybody's perfect, and we can sit here and point to mistakes that were made along the way. But I think their commitment and their support of the women's team has been unequivocal and probably unparalleled in the world. First and foremost, the girls that have won bronzes in London and Rio, and now a gold, are part of a program where the CSA subsidized their salary for the last decade. Okay, so the girls that have been playing in WSL, their salaries were either paid in whole or part by the Canadian Soccer Association in an MOU that we did way back in 2011, I believe it was. If
I can, for those who are not aware, you would have, of course, great knowledge of the situation because you were once upon a time the president of the Canadian Soccer Association. Continue.
And that's when we did it. So that was one. Two, we also invested in sort of the Rex program when we brought John on board to ensure that we identified talent through the system. A lot of the talent you're seeing now that played on the pitch in Tokyo were identified years ago as part of the Rex program. Again, an investment by the Canadian Soccer Association and its members, not just the CSA, in terms of identifying talent. And then obviously we took on a tremendous risk in hosting the Under-20 Women's World Cup in 2014, and also the Women's World Cup in 2015, which was a tremendous success. And these are all things, I think, that have led to creating an environment, right, by the Canadian Soccer Association that can now attract investors, right? And so I wanted to go on record for that. And obviously, there's two things that a league always needs, Tony. One is investors. We've seen it with the MLS. We've seen it with the CPL. But the other thing is you need to have media partners, right? Media partners that understand it, that get it, that are your partners, that are not just rights holders, okay? And I've seen this throughout the world. So I'm not speaking in a vacuum here. And I have felt that the traditional media in this country, right, has seen football as just rights holders rather than actual partners who really look at a way to propagate the sport and move it forward in a way that I've seen done in other jurisdictions. And that was my criticism. It wasn't that they're not showing games or they're showing games. Those are all linear things. To me, it's about really becoming a partner with the sport, specifically with women's soccer now, where there's an opportunity, I think, to really show some growth as we move forward. And to me, I think it's important.
But if those other markets that you were probably talking about, where there were partners, was probably Europe, it's understandable because football is the number one sport. Where are those markets? Because what I wanted to get at was totally understand your point, but you know this as well as I do. This is a hockey first, hockey second, hockey third country, whether You like it or not, that's just reality. Is it not?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Maybe hockey fourth.
Yeah.
And so that's my point, is that I understand the business. I understand it as well as anybody. I understand that it's about numbers. It's about figures. I understand that. But I also know there's a way to, when you are committed and understand our sport, okay? Yeah, and understand the values of it. And as I said, I've done deals in the US, I've done deals in all the countries that it's not necessarily, I've seen how deals are done in Australia, quite honestly. They're different, Tony. It's not just about games. It's about, how you can build how you can build a deal to help promote the sport. It's not about just showing the game. It's about telling the stories, telling the narrative. And so, for me, we just did a deal at Concacaf very similar to that with our women's program with CBS. And it wasn't just about cash. It was about how they are going to build that platform for us. And so I actually think it can be done. I think it just takes, I think it takes leadership, and you need to care, Tony. And that has always been my issue. People don't care that if they don't know that you care. And my issue has always been that when I speak to people, quite frankly, in the media in this country, I could tell they don't care about my football. Yes, okay, you care about hockey, but you gotta care about something, Kawalo, right?
I care.
Well, of course you care. When I say media, I don't mean media talent. Of course, there's a lot of good football people in this country, people that cover football in the thing. That I'm not talking about that.
I'm the best, though. Yeah, well, yes or no?
Sei pazzo, Tony. That's why of course you're the best.
Thank you.
I'm talking about at another level about strategy. I'm just talking about strategy, and as you can tell, it's a bit of a frustration for me. And the only reason I mention it is because I think it's an opportunity now. I'm not even criticizing them. It's more of a call to action to say, hey, it's an opportunity now with the women's. Let's not lose the opportunity.
I'm happy we're discussing this because I have a couple of ideas that I'm going to throw your way. It's a Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro. You can go to sportbovshop.com for all of your officially licensed sports apparel and more. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of their items. This is one of the things that I've picked up on because I too watch very closely. I listen very carefully. And I find that when a lot of people in this country talk about football or European football or our football, which here they call soccer, I find that they've studied what they have to say and they say it, but I can tell that they don't watch all the time, and I can tell that they don't listen all the time. They do the interview because they have to do the interview, and I agree with you that sometimes it really sounds like they don't care. But my opinion on this matter is this. I don't think enough people in our country that are working, covering the sport, really know a lot about the sport. And I say that, I mean no disrespect, really, when I say that. I just think that, we talked about how big hockey is here, and I think a lot of people watch soccer in the eyes of hockey. And they think, you know what, it's a similar game. One is 11v11, the other one is 6v6. One has a soccer ball, one has a puck, one passes with their foot, the other one passes with their stick. Both the objectives is to score goals in both sport. The reality is, other than those things, the sports couldn't be more different. And one of the things I think should have been done a long time ago, and it's never too late, and you'll tell me if something like this has been done before, or if you think, or if you agree with me, is that those with Canada, for example, Canada Soccer or U.S. Soccer, I really believe should go around the country and try and educate as many people as possible, parents, coaches, players, or even the media. Have media events, have media Zoom calls, invite the media on your Zoom calls, give them a tactical presentation, show them what a practice session would be like on Zoom. Is that crazy?
No, it's actually not crazy, because I think education, like anything is paramount, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, I remember I went into a talk show here locally in Vancouver, a pretty prominent talk show, sports talk show, And it was the morning of Canada-Mexico World Cup qualifier in the semifinal round. And before we went on there, the guy said, "So what's the meaning of this game?" Oh. So to me, that is, I get it. You're not a football guy, right? Or a soccer guy. I get that. Okay. I'm not a horse racing guy, but if I was interviewing you for the Kentucky Derby, God, so I would do my homework. No.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm talking about, caring, right? And I agree with you. There has to be an education. Somebody made a comment to me, once that about, well, the national team, wasn't that good. It was unwatchable. Hold on. It's a national team. First of all, we've had good national teams in the past.
Yeah.
People forget that. And with all due respect to this group of players who are fantastic, they haven't done anything yet. But we had some national teams that had that had De Guzman on there, Bernier on there.
Yeah.
We have good teams. Okay, fine. They didn't climb the mountain. Fair enough. But to say that our teams were unwatchable, it's because, again, you're right, Tony. It's a lack of education. Listen, with all due respect, my NHL team here, and I've been a season ticket holder for years. They're 50 years old. Maybe at 40 years, they've been unwatchable too here. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Listen, I can't force people to love the sport, but I find that over the years, it's almost like I've tried to do it. I just find that not enough people in our beautiful country love the beautiful game. And I talk to people about it, and people in my circle love it. And the parents, when I go to soccer practice, love it. But outside of that, just not enough people should love a game that's so beautiful.
Yeah, I know. Listen, and it's also, we got to take a lot of responsibility in terms of the Canadian soccer family, not the CSA itself or the provinces, but the family. Our strategy has been too grassroots, and we have to understand, and we've had moments in this game, whether it's sellouts with the men's team, whether it's 4.5 million people watching the women's team in the gold medal. Those are iconic moments where you can create the juice in the times when maybe it's not as interesting. And I think we've lacked some cohesion in the football family here. Everybody thinks they know the game better than the other person, rather than understanding how it should be done and how governance should be done. And so I think we have some responsibility in that too. It's not just it's not the media's fault or lack of investors. It's a strategy around it. I think when the CPL was launched, we actually fixed that, and I think we can do it again for the women's side and the women's part of the game in terms of, again, creating the right environment to get something going.
So our Canadian women win Olympic gold in Tokyo in soccer, of course. And at the end of the game, Christine St. Clair says, we need a women's league now. After 3 medals, one of which is gold. If we're not going to get our women's league now, we probably never will. You lobbied for the longest time for us to have a men's league, which came to fruition, of course, with the Canadian Premier League. I'm probably going to put you on the spot here, but I know you're a big boy and you can take it. This Canadian Premier League, based on what you've seen, couple of years in, would you say successful?
Absolutely.
Yes or no?
Absolutely. And not only is it successful just a few years in, it survived that pandemic. And there's many leagues in the world because, I with my other hat, I have to govern a lot of these leagues that didn't even survive the pandemic. And they have survived the pandemic. They scratched and clawed and did a bubble in the PI, and then they won in Winnipeg, and now they're starting the regular season. That shows tremendous commitment. And so, yeah, absolutely. It's very difficult to not call it a success. And as you can see with the team that is playing in the Concacaf League, it's coming, and in the Canadian Championships, they pulled up some upsets with MLS teams. So, yeah, absolutely successful.
So based on what you've seen, of course, in the Canadian Premier League, is it reasonable to think that we can have a women's league in Canada and that it will draw and that it will be profitable? Or will it be a venture for those who want to get involved and that are going to have to do it for the love of the game because it's not going to be profitable?
Well, as I said, with the CPL, what happened was CSA created an environment okay, that allowed investors to come in, and then a media company, a foreign media company, ironically, to come in to invest. And I think with the women's, and Christina's right, half right in that, we've won 2 bronzes and the gold, and, what else do you need? My other part of it is we didn't need to win 2 bronze and the gold to say that we needed a women's league, because we've had a good women's program for a long, long time, which she's been at the forefront of since she was the age of 16, 17, right? Yeah. So regardless, I mean, it's always great to win. Don't get me wrong. It helps the narrative. And so I think the environment has been set, right, for this. And it's not, is it on the backs of the CPL? Is that realistic? With all due respect, we also have 3 MLS teams here. What are they doing, right? And this is my whole point. This is where Canadian soccer family needs to get in a room to figure this out. This is not about CPL or MLS or one versus the other. This is about all the stakeholders coming together and figuring this out. It doesn't have to be like an NWSL model. It doesn't have to be like the CPL was or like the MLS. But there is a model, and we may have to start off smaller than, coast to coast or whatever. Maybe it's only based in the 2 or 3 provinces. That's fine. The point is, you need to create so many jobs for players, coaches, and administrators, period. Quite honestly, that means that this professional league is only in Ontario, Quebec to start with, I'm okay with that, right? Yeah. And maybe it builds out from there. And so what I'm saying is, but those discussions have to be held by the leaders in this country. And, right. And I've identified the leaders as just not soccer people, but also media. Because at the end of the day, it's media that makes the world go round with all sports in the world.
Speaking of Quebec, I get asked every day in terms of the Canadian Premier League, when will Quebec have a team? Do you know?
No, I don't know. It's not like I'm privileged to those discussions. I know in the early days, it was always a very important and a priority to have a team in La Belle Province. And so I don't think that's changed, quite honestly. I know I've heard various things about people that are interested in various places in Quebec. So I would think sooner than later it's going to happen. And I think it should happen. And it has to happen, because how can you not have a team in La Belle Province in our national league?
It'll be a big party when it does, and we'll call Sophistication Event Rentals, live music, DJ, sound system, tents, chairs, tables, decor, lighting, photo booth, TV screens, your one-stop shop in Montreal, 514-570-5770. You see the way I did that? I told you I was the best. All right, okay. Sooner or later, we were hearing it was going to happen that the U.S. program was going to be on par with Mexico's national program or better. You are the president of Concacaf. Mexico, for the longest time, has been at the top of Concacaf. What I saw from Team USA, their national team, in the Nations Cup and in the Gold Cup, I have to tell you, I don't know if they've surpassed Mexico, but winning the last couple of competitions, I'm not going to ask you if they've arrived, because clearly they've arrived. But do you see USA sustaining this, being toe-to-toe with Mexico, if not better, going forward? And do you actually think they can even distance themselves from Mexico?
I think the short answer is, yeah, they've arrived. I think they had fallen behind there for a little bit, but I think the plethora of young players that have gone to play in top leagues in Europe has paid dividends. And if you look at the team that likely will line up on September, second World Cup qualifying, I would say that, out of the 23-man roster, probably 18 are European-based, and not just European-based playing in far-off places, playing in top leagues in Europe, playing in the Champions League in Europe. And and we see that with our own players in Canada, players that are playing at that level. You can actually see it in the game when they're playing side by side with teammates that are not playing there. There's a massive difference, and it's the reality of football. It's not that that guy's not as good. It's just, it is what it is, right? And I see that the U.S. has done that. I think Mexico has an outstanding league, an outstanding national team, but they don't have a lot of players that are playing in Europe. And I think that eventually, when your players are not playing in the top leagues, it catches up with you. And I think it's a question of that. Can they distance themselves in short order? Probably not. But that could happen in 26, for instance. If one goes on, one does much better than the other, that could be the watershed moment. And that could be the same for anybody, by the way, including for our country, right? We want to get into that top 3 narrative, right?
Yeah.
And maybe on talent we're there, quite frankly. On results we're not there yet. But that's, I think, the goal over the next 4 to 5 years is to be in that narrative.
Whether it's World Cup qualifying or it's football or it's any sport, baseball, you can place your bets on MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag/the Sick Podcast. Use code SickPicks for a 50% deposit bonus. Bet, win, get paid. I want to talk to you, speaking of World Cup qualifying, I want to talk to you about the World Cup in Qatar 2022. How excited should I be about this World Cup in Qatar? I mean, there have been some doubts over the past couple of years whether or not Qatar was going to end up hosting this World Cup. It now seems like absolutely they will. We know the dates, and of course it's going to be in our winter months, which is not their winter months for them. How optimistic are you that Qatar will do a great job with 2022?
Well, I'm not optimistic. I know they'll do a great job. I've been in enough events, even the last couple of years, that they've hosted. Their stadiums that they built are incredible. The footprint that they've laid out for the World Cup of the 8 stadiums is going to be an unbelievable fan experience. And everything they do is top notch. And I think it's going to be a great World Cup off the field. And I think on the field, I think it'll be a great World Cup. And ironically, it'll be interesting to see because every World Cup is always in June.
Of course.
At the end of the season of a player, right? Now we're going to get players who have just loaded up a couple months.
Are at their best, probably.
And
now
not
tired.
On the World Cup, correct.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see the difference from an analytics standpoint, what kind of performances we'll see. It could take us to another level.
I'm just wondering which cafe I'm going to enter in the months of November and December with my winter boots and this and that. I think I'm going to have to go to Qatar.
Hey, absolutely. They're welcome. They're welcome in the world.
Those 8 stadiums, how far are they from each other? Paint the picture for me. So
let's say Stadium 1 is the furthest west. I don't know if it's east-west or north-south. And Stadium 8 is the furthest east. You can get to Stadium 8 in about an hour and a bit.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So it's just imagine, visualize. It's not a direct line, but I think it's a bit of a crisscross. But just imagine the Las Vegas Strip, and you go from Mandalay Bay on one end to whatever's down on the other end.
That's going to be unbelievable.
It's going to be unbelievable.
All right. As the chair of the World Cup 2026, you're at your home right now in BC, I believe, right? And over the next little while, you are going to be visiting the cities that have all put in a bid to host a game or more in the 2026 World Cup. How many cities is that?
We will be visiting a total of 23 cities. Obviously the U.S., Mexico, and Canada between the middle of September to the middle of November.
And Montreal is not one of them. It was made official a couple of months ago where the city of Montreal actually announced that they were pulling out of hosting a World Cup in 2026 or a game or two. I got to tell you, when I heard that they were pulling out, unfortunately, I wasn't surprised, but I was very, very disappointed. A lot of people are wondering why not. It's the biggest sporting event in the world. It's not every day you have a chance to host or co-host a World Cup. Canada will be in a bid venture co-hosting with USA and Mexico. The sport is growing in our country. I have to ask you, what happened?
Well, I agree. Very disappointed. It is a disappointment. Montreal is a great city. Has hosted many great events. Will likely host many great events in the future. An international city. We've hosted. We had the Women's World Cup there with the Under-20 Women's World Cup. We even had the Under-20 in 2007 there as well. And so it was a major disappointment. I agree. But in the end, Tony. The World Cup is different than the Olympics, right? In the Olympics, you got to build a lot of things. In football, we need one thing. We need a stadium. That's it.
That's right?
It. And everything else, okay, hotel and this and that, whatever. And of course, most international cities don't have those issues. And at the end of the day, it came down to, that not having a stadium of the standard as required for a World Cup was just a bridge too far for Montreal. And this is my opinion.
And they deemed that the money that they would have to pump into Olympic Stadium to bring it to standard was too big a price tag for them. And they probably thought the same thing about the other stadiums that we have in the city. But there are solutions, right? Like modular stadiums, correct? Could they not have added modular stadiums? I know of one company, I believe that is called Bear, that does them. So you add these modular stadiums to your existing stadium, and then you can actually dismantle them, and you can either sell them or you can keep them in your province. And if you've added 20,000 seats, you can end up having 10 modular stadiums of 2,000 seats throughout the province. And you continue to promote soccer at the grassroots level. Could they not have done that?
Yeah, listen, there's a solution to every problem. I mean, obviously, Olympic Stadium itself, modular wouldn't have been an option.
Not Olympic Stadium, no. But let's just say they would have added modular to Saputo or to McGill.
Possibly, yeah. Now, would it meet the standards? I don't know. But it would have been an exercise that could have been worth it. The reality is, this happens all the time. There's cities that pull out World Cups and or Women's World Cup, or I've been at the forefront of many World Cups now in the last decade at every level, and you have cities that are all in, and others that, for whatever reason, decide to pull out. And I guess Montreal decided, with their leadership, to say that this was just too difficult for them to either execute at Olympic Stadium or think outside the box with any other solutions, and they decided to pull the plug.
When you've been to many World Cups, and some cities have been in. You just mentioned, and some cities have been out. The ones that went in, did anyone ever express to you any kind of regret of going in or saying, we spent too much money, we lost too much money, we should have never done that?
No. First of all, there has been a couple of World Cups in the past that where stadiums that had to be built had become white elephants. Japan was one of them, unfortunately. I think there's maybe two stadiums in Brazil that are not used that much. I think Manaus is one of them. And so from an infrastructure standpoint, that has happened. But in terms of the actual operational profit and the economic impact to the country, I can tell you that the return on that impact is basically one for every dollar you put in, you get 10 back. And so, the World Cup, in terms of the fans, TV audiences is just second to none, as we know. As I told an NFL owner that I happened to be meeting with last month during the Gold Cup, when I said to him, again, we were talking about people that don't understand our sport. When I said to him, hey, I said, how many people you get watching the Super Bowl? And he goes, 100 million. I go, yeah, that's pretty good. I said, when we have the draw for the World Cup, which are a bunch of ping pong balls that you grab, pull out, and you say it's Italy versus Nigeria, Group A. He goes, yeah. I said, We got about 200 plus million watching that. Ping pong balls. He almost fell off his chair, right?
Wow.
So, I get it. It's, hey, listen, cities have to make their own decision. But at the end of the day, for us, it's very simple. If you don't have a stadium, it's pretty difficult to put on the World Cup. The good thing about 26 is that the cities that are in, there's no real issues with their stadiums. I mean, of course, there's going to have to be improvements here and there. I mean, we're still 5 years out. But there's no stadium that has to be built.
Is there any way that if Montreal has thought about it and they say, you know what, Victor Montagliani is going to be visiting 22 or 23 cities here from September to November or whatever, we want back in. Is this a closed case, or is there a possibility of this door reopening?
Well, we are going on this visits, like I said, these 3 months. We are then selecting cities. And we will be announcing those cities in the January timeframe, early next year. We've always said to everybody, listen, you need to put your best foot forward. The likelihood of that being a reality is probably not very high, but obviously if there's some sort of, complete change in the city and they come back with a concrete plan and commitments, I mean, FIFA at the end of the day has the right to make a decision, the best decision for the World Cup. And if FIFA thinks the best decision in the World Cup is to take those commitments, then that's something they would look at. But so I guess in short, the answer would be nothing's ever gone. But there's not much left on the runway here since we are planned our visits and we are announcing these cities in January.
What a great conversation. I had a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. You're a pretty humble guy, and I know you won't want to take any credit in this, but we talked about our Canadian women winning gold at the Tokyo Olympics. And once again, there were a lot of people behind the scenes, not just now, but back in the day as well, to build the program. And Vic Montagliani, you were one of those people. So cheers to you, because you have a part in that medal. Cherry River Hard Seltzer is what I'm having. You'll be happy to know that it's only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives, now available in Quebec grocery stores and the beer stores. So here's to you, and chin chin salute. And hopefully Montreal will end up being back in the dance at one point here. Hey, nice talking to you.
Thanks, Tony. Great having the chat anytime. And take care of yourself. And I hope to see you soon in person.
Okay, you too. Ciao, ciao. Thank you.
Ciao, To.